This is a story that came to me from David Campbell of Edinburgh, and it's a story of the Scottish border. Now, in days past, dark, distant, dangerous days, the Scottish border country was a lawless place. And if I say to you, horse dealer, and I say to you, horse stealer, I think you'll agree there's not much to choose between the two. And it's not for me to say what side of that line fell Carnaby Dick. Carnaby Dick was a popular fellow. He was always ready with a song, or a tale, or a joke, and people liked him. But those same people were a wee bit leery around Dick, a wee bit careful, perhaps even a wee bit frightened. For his temperament was bold and it was reckless. Now, on this particular evening, Carnaby Dick was making his way home from market, and he had with him 2 horses which he'd failed to sell at market. And he was making his way across Bowden Moor in the Eildon Hills near Melrose. And he had just crossed into the darkness of the woods when, as if from nowhere, he was confronted by a dark figure. The figure of an ancient man, dressed all in black, and in clothes which were antiquated. They weren't the clothes of Carnaby Dick's time. And this figure walked past Carnaby Dick to the horses, and he began to inspect the horses. And after a while, he turned to Carnaby Dick and asked his price. Now, Carnaby Dick would make a bargain with the devil himself if the price was right. So after a little haggling, a price was agreed. And the dark figure of the old man passed a purse of coins into Carnaby Dick's hand. And he felt the weight of those coins. And he looked down. He saw them glinting in the purse, and he knew that this was old gold, a real treasure trove. The old man then turned to Carnaby Dick and said, "Be here in 7 days' time, and if you have horses, I have need of them. But mark my words, come alone." So, bold and reckless as he was, Carnaby Dick returned to that place after 7 days, at the same hour, in the same location, with 2 further horses, and a bargain was struck. But on the 3rd occasion, when Carnaby Dick returned to that place, his curiosity had begun to get the better of him. And he said to the old man, "A dry bargain, a bargain that's not sealed with a drink, is no good bargain, by my way of thinking." Now, what was really going on was that Dick was curious. And driven by that curiosity and his greed for gold, it must be said, he figured that the old man must have a dwelling nearby. And he was curious to see that dwelling. And he thought there might be more gold in it for him. Now, the old man turned and he fixed Carnaby Dick's gaze with penetrating blue eyes. And it was as if he could see directly into Carnaby Dick's soul and read his thoughts. For he said you wish to see my dwelling, you may, but be warned. If that choice you make, you may rue the day. But bold and reckless Carnaby Dick was not to be put off, and he got down from his horse and he tied that horse to a blackthorn bush, and he followed the old man. Now, Carnaby Dick felt a certain confidence, because he'd walked every drover's road and deer track in these hills since he was a boy. He knew the land very, very well. So you can imagine his surprise when the old man brought him to the entrance of a cave which Carnaby Dick had never seen before, and furthermore, he had never even heard tell of it. And again, the old man gave him the choice to return, but Carnaby Dick was determined, and he followed the old man into the cave, which was narrow and low and dark, so dark in fact that Carnaby Dick had to hold on to the bony shoulder of the old man for fear of bashing his head. Now, after some time, Carnaby Dick's eyes grew accustomed to the gloom, and he saw that he was no longer in a narrow, low tunnel. He was in a stable under the hill, and in each stall of that stable stood a fine ebony-coloured warhorse, and by each warhorse lay a knight in ebony armour, each knight with a drawn broadsword held to his chest in gauntleted gloves. Horses and knights were both cold and still as stone, yet each of them retained an eerie, lifelike quality. And the old man pressed on through the stables, and Carnaby Dick followed him until they came to a great cathedral-like space lit with 1,000 glimmering candles. Carnaby Dick could barely see the roof of this space, and his eyes couldn't penetrate into the dark recesses of its corners. But the old man had continued across the centre of this great hall. Carnaby Dick followed until they came to a low table, like an altar. And on that table lay a beautiful sword with a golden hilt encrusted in jewels. It had clearly been made by some very, very skilled hand of old. And next to that sword lay a hunting horn of gold, the like of which Carnaby Dick had never seen. Now the old man had passed round to the other side of the table, and again he fixed Carnaby Dick's gaze with those eyes. And these were the words that he incanted. Now ye must choose the sword or horn. The first ye take shall seal your fate. Who has the courage and the power? A king o'er all this land shall make. But choose ye wrong, and you must die. So speaks the tongue that cannot lie. Now, on hearing these words, Carnaby Dick's blood ran cold, because he knew the legends of the border country, and he knew the tongue that cannot lie belonged to none other than Thomas of Ercildown, Thomas the Rhymer, true Thomas, who had been stolen away by the fairy queen and held captive for 7 years and a day. And on his return, he had been given the fairy sight, the gift of prophecy, and he had also been given a tongue that could not utter a false word. But these events had happened many hundreds of years before Carnaby Dig's time. Now, in that moment, Carnaby Dig became aware of an otherworldly silence in that space, so much so that he felt he could hear the blood pumping in his veins and his heart beating faster and faster and faster. He reached out because he knew he must choose, but he also knew that his choice was a choice between life and death. His hand reached towards the sword, but then his hand faltered because he feared such a bold move might anger the spirits under the helm. So his hand swerved away from the sword and he picked up the hunting horn. And he blew into the horn with all his might. But the note that sounded from that horn was feeble and faltering and empty. But as feeble as it was, its effect was great and immediate. The first thing that Carnaby Dig heard was a strange groaning and creaking sound, so that he turned towards the stables and he saw the great ebony war horses creaking and groaning into life, and beside them the ebony knights groaning and creaking into life and mounting the great war horses and riding towards Carnaby Dig, their hooves thundering, a great wind like a hurricane blowing and swirling in the cathedral now, until Carnaby Dig was caught up in this great tempest like a wind-blown leaf, and he was lifted off the ground and he was thrown back through the great cathedral space, through the stables, into the narrow tunnel, until he was spat out of the entrance of the cave and dashed on the sharp rocks on the side of the hill, where he lay breathing his last. Now all was silent. The cave was gone when the cold, thin, watery light of dawn began to break through, and two shepherd boys found Carnaby Dig lying close to death at the foot of the hill. And it was with his last breath that he recounted the tale that I have just told